What is your reaction to that story that was yet yesterday by NTV, also published by the Daily Nation, the toxic Nairobi River?
So thank you very much, Zainab and my fellow panelists. One, I'm very glad that now this is a national discourse. For a very long time, the issue of Nairobi River and the Nairobi River ecosystem has been just domiciled within the county government and a few of the agencies that are concerned with the maintaining a clean and healthy environment. One, let me say, first of all, it's a fundamental right for every Kenyan to have a clean environment. It is espoused in Article 42 of the Constitution, and it goes further to give us responsibilities as leaders and as managers of these resources in 69 and 70 to give our other future generation a healthy environment. Now, why I'm glad that we're having this discussion is because other than it looking like it's an expose, it's not actually an expose. It is the actual true reflection of what human activity can do to destroy the planet Earth. And when I say the Nairobi ecosystem, it's because Nairobi River is not just the Nairobi River that you know. We have more than 5 rivers that cut across Nairobi as a city, and it comes all the way from Kiambu for Mathare River, for example, goes down through Westlands to Mathare and joins other river from the other side. Ngong River is the other one that now has the major source of industrial pollution that cuts across through the river, industrial area, South B area and down. Then we have the main Nairobi River. So for me, I am glad that all the stakeholders and the CC for Makueni thinks Nairobi is responsible. I want to tell him that Nairobi belongs to all of us. All of you live in Nairobi. All of us work in Nairobi. But we just have a responsibility as a county government to ensure that Nairobians and the nation at large, as you have seen the way the Nairobi River cuts across through Machakos, going down to Kitui, to Makueni, down through Galana, all the way to the coast. And I really want to thank the scientific approach that we are taking now. Majorly, when I took over as the CC for Environment, I was first disgusted and disappointed with the level of solid waste that was being deposited in the river. Because however much you want to talk about the quality of the river, there's nothing we can talk, Zainab, if all the solid waste from upstream is landing in that river. We will not talk about quality of the water. First of all, let's agree the ecosystem of the river is dead. The biological organisms inside that river is dead. Someone was talking about Thwake Dam, and I'm like, it's good we are recognizing that we are doing a 68 billion dam that might be the largest reservoir of human waste and industrial waste. Really? So I like the discourse. Let's discuss it and agree that human activity, irresponsible human activity, has changed the natural state of Nairobi River into a toxic river that cuts across our country by close to half of that ecosystem. And we'll definitely have a discourse and conversation surrounding it, but when it comes to the very essence of implementing and ensuring that we have to do something about this. So we've seen before, NEMA has closed down a number of industries. Even some people have been arrested for depositing and dumping there. But then what is the county of Nairobi really doing, knowing the fact that, you know, the river is polluted mainly from the source in Ondiri? This is where the dumping actually starts. So thank you very much for that. Now, let me just take you back slightly to 2017. Through the leadership of His Excellency, the President of this country, Uhuru Kenyatta, who is the chair of the Nairobi Regeneration team. And the co-chair is His Excellency Governor Mike Mbuvi Sonko. After realizing the amount of challenges that was cutting across several sectors in the county, decided to have a common regeneration meeting where the sectors were given responsibilities to tackle that affect their sector. So one of it was water and environment. And the president and the governor were concerned with the kind of degeneration of the Nairobi River. I know the late Michuki had done a lot of work. And when we came in after the second administration of this government, one of our responsibilities was to make sure that the Nairobi River ecosystem is restored back. Now, we had to take the bits that were first practicable. Number one, the amount of irresponsibility of our human behavior is one of the major threats. So number one was to do sensitization, and first of all, even map out the polluting points up from Kikuyu, from Mondiri, as you've said, down. Number one, we have issues of human or sewer waste. Most of the upmarket apartments are not joined to the main sewer infrastructure. And this is just complete irresponsibility, which I want to say our planning sector now has already mapped out all the apartments that are discharging waste directly either to the soil or to the rivers. That's number one. Number two, downstream to the industrial area, we've mapped out, and I really want to thank, I don't know if an officer from NEMA is here. Working with NEMA, we have identified industries, and we have closed down close to 26 of them that were discharging industrial waste directly to the river. What does this do? It not only poisons the water because of heavy metal deposits, but it also increases the cost of Nairobi Water Company treating the grey water in Ruai and in our Dandora treatment plants. So what we have done is we have already identified the last one, or the third major source of pollution is human waste. And Zainab, I would really wish that after these discussions in the studio, I want us to go down to the river. We show you how structure owners who live in the leafy suburbs of Karen, of Lavington, of Buruburu, have grabbed riparian land, developed structures, rented out, and they have actually strategically put all the toilet facilities inside the river and flushing the raw waste directly to the river.
All right, and you've talked about, the county government mapping out and, of course, pointing at these particular residential areas, especially yes, from those areas. But what exactly has the county done? And I'll come to you in just a moment, Veska. Okay. I understand Okokusa from Kisumu County is also on the same issue. Okokusa, very good morning to you. What is happening in Kisumu?
Well, Zainab, a very good morning to you too. Where I'm standing is on the shores of Lake Victoria, the second largest freshwater lake in the world, which of course, as we all know, has been going through challenges to do with pollution. Environmentalists, they are saying that the lake actually has faced a lot of challenges as far as pollution is concerned. We are talking of both solid and liquid waste being discharged into the lake from various quarters. We all understand that this particular forms of pollution caused even the emergence of the obnoxious water hyacinth weed, which first appeared on Lake Victoria in 1992. And thereafter, there has been a lot of concern and efforts being made by conservationists just to try and save the lake. We are talking of dwindling fish stocks in the lake being actually attributed to that kind of pollution. Even as we speak now, there is a dredger that was brought in by the government to try and desilt the lake. We're talking of the lake basin or bed reducing to less than to less than 6 meters. So that dredger is supposed to be desilting the lake and creating some 6 meters, which is they believe after that will be the big ships will be able to dock on the port of Kisumu, which, as we all again understand, is under refurbishment. But just to paint some more picture on how polluted the lake is and the efforts that are being made, I have besides me here Mr. Michael Nyaguti, an environmental activist, who is going to tell us what are the challenges that Lake Victoria is currently facing. Welcome, sir. Let's start by just telling us how great is the threat on Lake Victoria?
The threat is very great. In fact, it is overwhelming. Currently in Kisumu City, for example, we have a lot of municipal waste that is running off to the lake in terms of when it rains. We also have issues of the factories around here that are releasing their waste into the lake in terms of chemical wastes, and some part of this could also be waste that is used to clean. We also have chemical waste coming as a result of poor, land use in terms of agriculture. We have chemicals that are being sprayed, and most of these, when it rains, also ends up in the lake. Unfortunately, again, we also have waste that is coming from the government side. We have a treatment plan for sewage that sometimes don't work well. When it doesn't work well, you'll find that part of raw sewage sometimes spills into the lake, and this also helps in contamination. We also have other facilities like prisons around this city. For example, we have had problems with Kodiaga prison at times, in fact, more often than not, releasing raw sewage into the lake through River Saka. So some of these issues actually have overwhelmed the lake, and you will find that apart from that, we also have solid waste that is coming into the lake. A lot of plastics have been thrown around, and when it rains, most of these through the trenches will move into the lake. We have also had issues of earlier on, sometimes back, we used to have problems of chemical fishing in Lake Victoria. That also became a problem. But as at now, I think a good bit of that has been contained. So we have problems in the lake. The water that we have may not be of very good quality because outside there, we also still have people who don't have actually toilets. So you'll find that open defecation is still a problem. So when it rains again, that part of the chemical contamination from the waste also goes into the lake. We also have a lot of construction work that is ongoing. Now, when actually it rains again, part of this soil siltation ends up in the lake. We also have on the hilltops a lot of deforestation. This has also caused a lot of challenges.
So sometimes back there were some spirited efforts by NEMA to rid the lake of car washers, because they're saying that there's a lot of oil spillage that happens during such activities. And again, we also made to understand that even the engines that go into the lake for fishing sometimes spill oil into the lake, and that also contributes to pollution. I don't know whether how that is also a serious challenge as far as you're concerned.
Oil pollutants are also a challenge in the lake because actually right now there is an increase in use of engines for riding and then of course for fishing. But again, NEMA, as you have said it, tried to actually remove people from particularly this area and many other areas, but it has not been enforced properly because you'll still find people coming back to do that. Even though there is that kind of pollution, it is not much as compared to what we get from the factories that we have around. You remember we also have sugar factories from this region that have also been releasing sometimes raw vinasse. This is a waste coming out of sugar factories, and in fact it is more of molasses and things like that, the other far end. So some of these also ends up in the lake. But now the challenge is we've had instances whereby the lakeshore again is also being destroyed because we used to have plants along the lakeshore. Hippogras, for instance, papyrus, and then now some of these grasses were actually consuming the chemical that was entering into the lake. Unfortunately, part of these wetlands are now being disturbed. Being disturbed by the fishermen, being disturbed including even by developers themselves. Many are encroaching onto the wetlands.
Okay, then let's, if you take a look at the lake right now, you can actually see some green algae. Is it algae or what do you call it?
Algal bloom.
Yes.
That is algal
What causes it?
This algal bloom is as a result of fertility of the lake because there's a lot of chemicals. So algae finds, a lot of content to feed on. And that is why actually you find them, and at the end of the day, some of it will die. But the green ones are still actually live. But then when it comes to a time when they're dying off, you'll find that it is now around brownish in color.
Then let's talk about what the water hyacinth weed. Of course, we all understand that it has brought a lot of challenge to Lake Victoria. It's been accused of causing depleting fish stocks, besides other things. Are there any advantages that the water hyacinth does to the lake?
Given the fact that I have a background of being a fisherman, indigenous knowledge for those of us who have been working in the lake will actually explain this. The water hyacinth, at some point, it is a blessing in disguise. A blessing in disguise as in when it is present, particularly in this Gulf of Kisumu, of Kavirondo, you'll find that the water hyacinth helps to clean the pollutants of this lake. And that is why, that explains actually why you'll find that the water hyacinth sometimes is very green. Because when it comes to this side, it will pick most of the pollutants that are actually coming from the city. Apart from that, the water hyacinth is also a conservator of the lake. We have illegal fishers in this lake who target every type of fish, including the tiny ones. And underneath the water hyacinth, and like what scientists have always wanted us to believe, that there is no life under the water hyacinth, indigenous knowledge from those of us who are actually always going out fishing will actually refute that.
Okay.
We want to say that the water hyacinth is also a conservator. Underneath the water hyacinth, we have fish that are alive.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, enough with the problems, solutions. What can we do to save Lake Victoria?
One, we call upon the community, because environment cleanliness begins with us. We call upon our people to ensure that there is no open defecation. Let everyone who can afford put up at least a pit latrine so that that waste can go into the pit latrine. Two, we are calling upon the municipal facilities to strengthen their capacity in terms of raw waste treatment. We are also calling upon NEMA to be much more strict, so that anybody who is found polluting should actually be forced to pay. Let the penalty be so much so that these people will now not actually allow their pollutants to come into the lake. Okay. Yes, I think this will also help us, and the county government and the county assembly should actually make even stricter rules on issues of pollutants. And we are also calling upon the city, the city management of Kisumu, that actually we used to have a big problem, a big challenge at Kachok dam site. But unfortunately, at the very same Kachok dump site, we have a hole, a big one that has been dug, and part of this waste has been dumped there. Okay. This waste that has been dumped there and is being covered with soil now is actually going to cause leaching, and leaching will end up in the lake, and our fish will be contaminated. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Michael. Zainab, that is Michael Nyaguti, an environmental activist here in Kisumu, just trying to share with us and shed some light regarding what needs to be done to save Lake Victoria from the pollution that has been witnessed over the years, and which has caused, as I've mentioned, the depletion of fish stocks, and of course made even the water unsafe for drinking. Remember, as we speak now, you cannot walk there and fetch water and drink it direct because it is highly contaminated, that is as far as environmentalists here are concerned. And of course, this is a conversation that has been ongoing for a very long time. There has been a lot of spirited efforts by both NEMA and even the county of Kisumu to just try and save the lake from further pollution. And as we heard from Michael, the recipe for that is very clear, and the authorities that are concerned, as mentioned them there, have their jobs well cut out for them. Back to you, Zainab.
All right, thank you so much, Okukus from Kisumu County, standing right at the Lake Victoria. And of course, the situation is not the best either, as compared, of course, to what is happening as well here in Nairobi at the Nairobi River. And I'll ask you, Elizabeth, as an environmentalist, and of course, Veska has talked about trying to sensitize residents of Nairobi. Is it just ignorance that we end up dumping? We take everything that we have from our households, forget about the industries at this point. The households, of course, have built the structures along the river. Is it ignorance that we dump our waste there?
I think this is a question of individual responsibility, one, and the second one about strict law enforcement. And I think my fellow panelists will agree with me that we have a problem in the country when it comes to how we address our issues. We only act when disaster occurs. We are quick to act and rush into trying to solve challenges after a disaster has already occurred and after something is out there in the public, in the conversation. For example, maybe tomorrow or even today, someone is out there in the field after watching the show yesterday. And it's not that it's a new issue. This is something that has been there. We know it's there. It's only that it has been brought to the limelight of the public. So I think it's a great challenge when it comes to how do we address our issues in the country. Do we just rush to do things because it's out in the public, or are we doing it to save the entire human race and the planet at large? So this is a great issue, especially to the individual responsibility. For example, most people out there when you're traveling, you'll find people throwing trash out of the car windows. So where does this trash end up into? It drains right back into our rivers. Number two, the issue of the law enforcement. People, they're directing their seaways into our rivers. And most of these industries, yes, we're told that they're being shut down, but maybe, are there untouchables that we are not being told that possibly their industries are still running up to date? Because they all need to be addressed, because I believe nobody is above the law. Everybody ought to obey the law as it's supposed to be. So I think it's an issue of individual responsibility of how we as citizens are actually affecting our environment with the little things that we are doing, from dumping waste anyhow. And number two, it's about these industries and agriculture as well, and every other person is contributing towards the pollution of our rivers. So it's a two-way activity.
Two-way activity.
Yeah.
All right, and Dr. Gitai, would you, even with your scientific research, would you attribute the state of Nairobi River to the increased population within the city?
Yes, that would be true. Because as the population increases, more contamination is expected to be released.
Did you find that in your findings as you moved forward across the river?
That's true.
All right.
There is increased human activity because pollution is out of human activity. As increased human activity, of course, we increase pollution. Generally, you know, a river ought to clean itself. But when it is overwhelmed by contamination, then it reaches a point when that will not happen.
Has that
has reached, of course, that it is at the breaking point, that the river can no longer clean itself.
So what does that mean for us?
I would, hearing from the panelists, it's like we have done almost everything that needs to be done. We have mapped, we know what is happening, and yet we are not achieving what we need to achieve. I would want to think that we need to change the approach, completely change the approach, and involve communities. Let's have community involvement to a point that would be able to have behavior change.
And personal responsibility.
As Tia said, because at the end of the day, if I appreciate the fact that I'm polluting the water that is affecting me, either directly or indirectly, I would think that I would be able to reach a point where we are able to do this. And we also need to borrow from other areas, other developed countries, where we have very clean rivers flowing in between cities. But have they been clean? At times they were as bad as our river. Maybe not that bad, but they were polluted to some point. But they have been able to work it around.
All right.
To a point that today, if you go to Europe, most of the rivers are attraction sites.
So, Joe, change of tactic?
I think I will be more happy if we change the narratives of this discussion. Because whatever we are discussing, like Dr. is saying, we've been to boardrooms. All these matters have been discussed. There is nothing new. Feska will tell you she spent maybe 50% of our time discussing these matters. They are there, they are known. I will take the direction Kashola is taking. We need to be discussing what we need to do. The moment we start apportioning blames to institutions, then we will not go nowhere. The answers are so simple that we have institutions which are tasked to do their part. Nairobi County, please wake up and collect garbage from the Nairobi River, period. Other institutions, Nairobi Water, connect sewer system. Okay? Companies, don't discharge. Water Resource Authority, do the regulations. Judges, I've seen judges in Mombasa. If I tell you the state of sewer system in Mombasa, and I'm having my judges in Mombasa, if I tell them what goes on there, I don't know whether there's anyone who will dive in the sea and swim. All right? I want them before, when somebody is taken to court, before they tell that person, or they lift an order, which has been either issued by Water Resource Authority or NEMA, I will tell that person, no, just go continue with your work, okay, until the matter is heard, before they think of doing that and bringing the parties together so that we can highlight the problems people facing. I want them to go to Mombasa and swim. Let them have a sip of that water, and then tomorrow they will visit Nairobi Hospital. So it is people doing what they are supposed to be doing. It is not the question of having boardroom meetings. This Nairobi generation team sat 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. They know the challenges. What next? You know, the way we do things in Kenya is the reason why we are in this state today. Because companies want to come out, sponsors want to come, people want to give money to institutions like us, and what do they do with the money? I want to tell you the money which is given by donors, 50% is used in research, or 90%. So if World Bank gives, for example, Water Resource Authority, let me take a blame, gives the Water Resource Authority some funding to clean Nairobi water, and we spent 90% in boardroom, right, and research, then what are we doing? We are wasting our times. Right. We need to wake up and do what is necessary. So let those institutions which are tasked to do their responsibilities perform them. Instead of rhetorics, instead of us people saying, you know, this is like this, just grab that jembe and wheelbarrow, go to Nairobi River, do your part. You say, my garbage is not there. What has happened? We have had so many interest of people trying to come to this country and say we want to do renewable energy. We want to ban this waste. Have they been given an opportunity to do that? The answer is no. Why are we not giving them? We are piling this trash day and day and day, and we are not taking it out. We are not banning it out. Where do we expect it to go? There's so much which we need to do, other than just sitting down and analyzing, bringing a technical team, bringing, I don't know, expert from where, thinking and going to... Why do I need to go to benchmark to clean a Nairobi River? I don't need to. I need to protect that river because that is my responsibility. Veska, you don't need to sit in a bed in a boardroom to discuss how Nairobi River should be clean or how Michuki did it. You have the wheelbarrow and you have the money power and you have the money which people are paying. Do that. Let the companies not discharge, and if they do that, let them be given orders to close down those factories. And if they go to court to lift them, let the judge not give them the orders to lift the orders which has been given by the authority. And if we do the right thing, Nairobi River will be clean.
So are the counties failing in terms of implementing these policies?
Not only county, everyone is failing in doing their job.
Then we can also say the Water Resources Authority with its mandate is also failing.
Actually, that's what I'm saying. We need to change the narrative. That's why we need to change the narrative and accept that everyone has failed. So can we do what is right? If it is Water Resources Authority, wake up, issue orders, follow it to the court, make sure the judge has not lifted that order. Okay? If it is order being issued to Nairobi County, let them not look at me and say, you know, you are being unfair to us. The trash is there. Until you carry it, I lift the order.
All right.
This is what we need to do.
All right, Robert.
Yeah, thank you so much, and I really appreciate what has been said by every one of us here. And one of the questions that you raised was, are we dealing with an issue of ignorance here? But when you look at the Constitution, what my sister is talking about, Article 42 says every Kenyan has the right to clean environment. It's a right enshrined within the Constitution. To the extent that if every Kenyan understood what Article 70 says, and I wish to quote that, Article 70 of our Constitution, it says that if a person alleges that the right to a clean environment and a healthy environment recognized and protected under Article 42, which is under the Bill of Rights, has been or is being or is likely to be denied, violated, infringed, or threatened, the person may apply to a court for redress, and I like the idea of court Jomo Rampo, in addition to any other legal remedies that are available. And it goes on to say, number 3, that for the purpose of this article, an applicant does not have to demonstrate that any person has incurred loss or suffered injury. So if Kenyans today understood that they have that right, that I feel, I don't need even to carry evidence like a nation, you have produced a lot of evidence. I just need to feel that my right to a clean environment has been infringed by an individual, by a company, by a government agency, and take you to court. And actually the court is expected by law to take action. So I think there's an issue here of awareness of our rights. And I think that's one of the things that we need to take it up. Everybody, NGOs, governments, county governments, to educate every Kenyan that you have a right to a clean environment. And if you feel that right is infringed or is threatened, you can go to court. You don't need to carry any evidence.
But Robert, instead of going to court, shouldn't the county government actually just take the initiative?
I'm getting there. Secondly, I said, as Mutambu is saying, we already know there's a problem. Somebody said you cannot do the same thing the same way and expect different results. Everybody says there's been things being done. Promises are promises, my sister. Explanations are explanations. Words are words. It's only reality that is only performance that is a reality. So I like the idea of the counties implicated, the government agencies who have a role coming together without apportioning blame and saying we have a problem, and then start defining what we need to do. The county that needs to collect garbage, collect garbage. I'm not blaming Nairobi, but I'm only saying the bulk of this pollution comes from Nairobi. That's a fact. But we're saying every of the counties where this river traverses needs to take their due share of responsibility. In that regard, I'm saying, can we think about a trans-county, a trans-boundary arrangement that is tasked with the clear terms of reference to deal with this matter. Article 42 says we have a responsibility of ensuring a clean environment for future generation. So we have a window of opportunity at this point in time to restore. And I like what my brother said. I was actually reading about Yorkshire, the river area, about the cleaning that has happened in London, and the river has been restored. It is not impossible. We just need the political, the professional will to do what needs to be done. And I like the idea, Dr. Joe Mutambu, that if an entity fails to do their job, there is a law that should be enforced, and they take responsibility. We may be dealing with an issue of symptoms here, Zainab. We may be dealing, we need to go, when you're doing development, you ask yourself, what is the root cause of a problem? Otherwise, you may be killing yourself with the symptoms. I still think this big animal called corruption is a root cause of some of the things that we are dealing with here. That I can get away with construction on a riparian side, and there's a government officer who issues that construction permit.
All right.
There's all that. So I'm saying, my sister, that we will not realize the big four, as His Excellency wants us, if we do not deal with the issue of pollution, issues of environment, issues of sanitation that are so critical. Even though we are talking about big four, I think you understand that the issue of environment and sanitation is a cross-cutting theme that, that provides the bedrock for the big four. If you don't deal with those, if you don't deal with environment and the climate change issues, the big four is a mirage. So, out of this, I will feel cheated if we don't take a concrete action. And that concrete action should be, I don't know who takes the responsibility.
Yes, Vasca.
Yes.
I think they are our clients, and we are at the center of the problem. We already have given solutions, and we have started working on some of the solutions. Number one, Zainab, I have told you we have already identified all the major polluting points in the whole of the 390-kilometer stretch that largely is on the Nairobi side. Number two, we have gone ahead to issue notices of closure and demolition of buildings that are on the riparian areas. And I want to bring in the political aspect. Remember when the green animal was walking through the parts of the Nairobi River, there was a lot of uproar that Governor Sonko was elected through a major populist vote, and he's here in office and he's already demolishing people's structures. And it goes back to taking responsibility. Here is a person who has constructed and done a major investment on a public utility land, majorly for this case, a riparian area. Number two, this same person is not only taking away our public land, he or she is discharging waste directly to the river. So what are we doing? We are now demolishing, and I'm glad that Governor Sonko is taking a lead, and we cannot do it alone. We have to do it with the national government through the Ministry of Interior. Most of the riparian areas have been allocated to investors by chiefs. You find a chief giving an allotment letter to someone to construct. And I cannot give instructions to a chief. The Ministry of Interior has to take its rightful place and do its work. Enforcement and surveillance. Before waste leaves your door, do you know who collects your waste? Every day, Nairobi County collects 2,700 to 3,000 tons of waste on a daily basis, which we designate all the way to Dandora, and that's where now we are going to deal with issues of dealing with Dandora as a landfill, which we are working on a waste-to-energy plant, which we are also thinking about other modern ways of dealing with it, like the circular model. Why can't we educate our people to reduce the amount of waste that they get out? On average, a household produces 0.7 kgs to 1 kg of waste on a daily basis. Is there a way we can teach ourselves to reuse, to recycle the waste that we generate so that we reduce the amount of waste? Number three, are you responsible as a residents association to know who collects our waste and does it land in the right place, or it is discharged
But that's the work of the Nairobi County.
And that's what I'm telling you about surveillance. So we have surveillance officers that are moving around, but most of these things happen at night. I can tell you, for example, the discharge of human waste in the upper side of Ngong Road. Every day we get hold of 2 to 3 exhausters, and we take them to court and we penalize them. But this does not stop if we are not going to have a behavioral change. Finally, we are going to do canalization of Nairobi River. We are canalizing Nairobi River, and Governor Sonko has already entered into discussions with one of the investors, especially in the informal settlements. Canalization of the river, and as you've said, London and the other areas, the Ganges of India, for example, after cleaning, part of it has to be canalized to prevent encroachment and prevent sewer infrastructure going direct to the river. Finally, can we clean this water? And I'll tell you why we need to clean the water in Nairobi. And we will need your research findings. Zainab, it may be important for you to know that as we grow as an industrial nation and a city, we are having a serious shortfall of water. The demand of Nairobi residents and industries is 750 million liters per day. We produce as Nairobi Water 526 million liters per day, meaning we have a shortfall of 200 million liters per day. If any sensible person can sit down in planning, we should be thinking about how can we use this resource that cuts across our city to take care of the deficit. How? Teach industrialists to recycle their water. Have designated points along the river where we can clean the water and have it back to the floor and be used, for example, in farming activities, as you have seen in Ruai, other than people cutting through a sewer line and using the sewage water to plant.
And those are fantastic plans, but is it feasible?
Now, that's where we are going. And that's why I was saying, let's stop. I've said I feel I am tired of the discourse in studios and boardrooms. Today, Nairobi County has employed 2,000 casuals. If I take you today, if I can even get you photos right away, you will see our youths walking through Krogan area here. We've taken street urchins and street boys to help us to clean. Korogocho, you've been seeing Comb Green youths. And every day, on a daily basis, we collect between 50 and 100 tons of solid waste from the river. But what goes on? You remove. By tomorrow, it has been refilled. So what we are saying here is we need a collective responsibility.
Right.
Finally, resources. We cannot continue expecting Nairobi County government with the resources that they have. We use 1.7 billion shillings annually to clean the Nairobi environment. This money can be used to do other important things if we could take responsibility, as the panelists are saying.
You say how much? 1.7
billion shillings. Billion shillings to collect waste and take it to Dandora to surveil.
But the environment is not one to show for.
Correct. And I'm telling you, the county government is doing its part.
Okay.
But Nairobians have continued to become irresponsible, and it is a high time to educate from our children to households to be responsible for their waste.
All right.
Because,
Look,
and I'll tell you where the responsibility comes from.
Mm-hmm.
MCA 2015, the Environmental Management Act, puts the responsibility of management of waste on the generator. The person who generates the waste is supposed to be responsible for the management of that waste.
All right.
And for the county government, it's a complementary responsibility and enforcement.
And we'll come to the sewage system, and of course that's a big issue as well in Nairobi. I know, Joe, you wanted to respond to something, then we'll come to Robert.
Yes, please. Yes, I think, my sister, you are doing a very good job. But I want to take you to the point which Kasiona alluded, that doing things the same way for many times and expect the different results is impossible. You are doing a good job employing youth, putting them to Grocon and Global Roundabout to collect garbage, and tomorrow to have the same. I would do it in a different manner. I would not even bother with the crop if from the source is not clean, because you do it at downstream and upstream there's somebody who's also putting the filthy. I will do it from the other side and make sure that I protect as I go down. If you don't do that, my sister, every day you'll be getting a blame, because the trash will be there, you'll be cleaning, you'll be picking, but you have not protected that area. So protection is also another aspect which is not in your budget.
That is talking about protection of that source when he's the chairman of Warma. Warma is supposed to be taking care of the sources of the rivers, for example, and the management of that river going down. Going upstream, I will be dealing with effluent. But what will you do if the effluent is coming out from the upper side and the major obstacle of solid waste starts midstream from Kibera going downwards? What do you do? Will you clean
I want to help you, Feska, on this.
Joe,
there is an issue.
Just to hold on to that thought, we'll get back to there. I understand it's raining in Muranga and our reporter is on standby. He's talking to the Chief Officer of Water in Muranga County, Martin Moura. A very good morning to you.
Thank you so much. As you can see, we are here with the Water Chief Officer, Mr. Anthony Maina. We just want to delve on this topic that you're discussing at the studio about the toxic flow, which has really been affecting this, not only Nairobi, even some other counties. Without further much ado, I just want to talk to the Chief Officer just to tell me the measures that they have always put in place to ensure that the toxic water does not flow in Muranga. Muranga is one of the counties that provide water for Nairobi. And welcome to NTV, Mr. Anthony Maina. I just want you to tell me, or even our viewer, what measures have you put in place to ensure that there is no toxic flow in our rivers here in Muranga?
Of course, basically, releasing toxic materials to the rivers is a crime. So we have the existing laws. If one is caught doing such a thing, he will face the full force of law. And it's actually a very major issue, which requires stiffer penalties, which is something that I would even recommend even as at now. Because if we do not act now and prevent such things from occurring now, we may find ourselves in the situation that in the case of Nairobi, where you see that the river has completely been transformed into a sewer system. Yes, so we have the laws, and in case we find that there are some charges coming up, we even make it very stiff for those who will be committing such crimes. Yes. I
know such cases are not very rare here in Muranga. Why do you think so? Is it that the citizens are law abiding, or is it that we lack so many factories here in Muranga?
Basically, we all know Muranga is in the highlands, and the backbone of the Muranga economy is in agriculture, not really industrialization if you compare with places like Nairobi. With research, you find that probably the only toxic that we may get contaminating the environment are probably from the farm inputs, the fertilizers, the chemicals that are used, which are minimal. And again, our water is continuously flowing. It is not static, apart from the few dams that we have here. It is continuously flowing, thus eliminating in the eventuality where you may find that we may have a disaster coming up from the toxic elements flowing into the water. Okay. Yes. Okay.
Maybe as a county, what are you doing to do on water conservation and environment conservation? What are the measures that you put in place to ensure that this Nairobi Northern Water Collector Tunnel, which will be is meant to take 140 million cubic meter water to Nairobi, what are you doing to ensure that maybe the environment and water is conserved?
We are working with all the stakeholders. Basically, like the first thing, we are keen on the riparian land. We want to protect the riparian land because, again, if we don't do it now, you don't know what is going to happen in the future, and we don't want to get in situations where the situation gets out of control. On the issue of the collector tunnel, for us, and maybe if I mention this one, we are trying to ensure that Muranga people have 100% connection of domestic water before the water flows to Nairobi. That way, nobody will have a problem if we ensure that that one happens. So, in connection, in working with the other stakeholders, we have ensured that there are various measures. The tree planting, various conservation measures are being taking place to ensure that at least we safeguard the wetlands so that we can have continuous flow. We don't want a situation where in the future we may find that all water has flown to Nairobi and our rivers are flowing up. We don't have sufficient waters. Okay. Yes, so we are doing a lot of conservation. There are a lot of conservation efforts. There are many organizations which are on board, and we will be able to contain the situation to avoid a disaster in the future. Okay. Yes.
Murang'a is slowly growing, and soon you're seeing industries being set up. You've said that maybe we have no cases of toxic flow in Murang'a. They're not high unless from the fertilizers or the farm inputs. Maybe what measures are you going to put in place to ensure that factories that maybe come up in the future do not do what other factories are doing in Nairobi?
We have clear guidelines in Murang'a. Before you set up a factory, there has to be measures that you must fulfill, especially with regard to the environmental impact. That way we ensure that you have met all the conditions, you have met the standards to ensure that at the production level, when the factories become operational, there are no affluents that are flowing directly to the river before treatment. We ensure that such happens, and there are stiffer penalties if you don't follow that guideline. Okay. Yes.
Thank you so much for your time, sir.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Hi. Zainab, we were talking to the chief officer who is in charge of water here at Murang'a County, Mr. Anthony Maina, and he has clearly put it that Murang'a does not have toxic flow at that rate. But they will ensure that they put measures in place to ensure if factories are set up in the future, it does not happen. Back to you, Zainab.
Thank you so much, Martin Maura there from Murang'a. And as we continue the conversation, I'd just like to point a tweet here from Daniel Juguna. He says the biggest culprit is raw sewage discharged into rivers. Lack of a proper sewage system in high population urban settlements and slums is the biggest culprit. Where is Nairobi Water and Sewerage Company in this mess? Nairobi Sewage Company is broken and is squarely to be blamed for this mess. Of course, we'll get from you, Vesca, but Joe, you were speaking on something.
Yes, what I was saying that
yes.
Actually I feel directed with the Vesca, and I actually feel very disappointed when I see our effort, because she puts a lot of effort into this matter, going to West. And the reason is that it's the way things are done. If you do things in the wrong way, definitely all your efforts will be for nothing. There are key aspects which need to be looked into before we even implement nothing. We need also to understand our existing legislation. You will find we have a lot of overlapping legislation. We have Water Act, we have NEMA Act, we have Physical Planning Act, we have County Act, and each act or each legislation is talking something different when it comes to riparian and when it comes to what needs to be done to those rivers. And that's why I'm bringing this topic, because she just said that they are planning to canal the Nairobi River. That is something actually which is also in our books, what we are trying to do. And once you do something and then you do not consult the other institution because the laws are there, then you also find yourselves in litigation issues which will also not make you move forward. Right. So the way forward is that as we have this Nairobi regeneration team and as we have the teams in the place, what we need to do is just to come together and agree on what needs to be done for the way forward. And if we do it that way, everybody will be a winner. But the moment Water Resources Authority wakes up and says, I want to do this, then the county government will come and say, no, this is my area, you cannot do this, or that will say, you can't do that. You will find us, we are giving orders. Tomorrow, you find the same person whom we have served with an order, he has a clearance from NEMA. When they go to court, you don't know what to do. Those are some of the issues actually also which need to be looked into. I just said, and according to the tweet we have just read, I've just said, in this matter, Nairobi Water Company, which is actually also a baby of Nairobi County, is purely to blame. They are claiming that they do not have enough water. I can tell you from our records, we pumped to them over 2 million cubic liters. They can only account for 500. 1.5 million cubic, they call it non-revenue water. Where are they taking that water? Where is it going to? Those are the issues we need to highlight. Because we are the one who are, the regulator, and we are the one billing them on a daily basis. We know how much they are taking. So, yes, there's a demand for water. How much are we giving them? How much are we saying? There is also a cartel in this business, which also needed to be controlled. And there is also a cartel in dumping of the
raw sewage into the river.
Raw sewage into the river, and which also need to be looked into. All those things, they need a strong, not organization. Organizations are there, laws are there, regulations are there. We need strong people. People don't fear bullets. Like Mutambo, I'll tell you, I will arrest you, do whatever you want to do. And this is what we need to do.
All
But
right.
the people who just make noise and the people call themselves in the offices, this is not going to happen.
Okay. Before Robert, I'd just like Daktari to answer this question, because a lot of people are asking this, and this came out quite, you know, in a huge term yesterday. So they're asking, can we connect the high cases of cancer that we're witnessing in the country due to this?
That could be so. Of course, you may not directly pin it to that, but that is a contributing factor. And
We
you
cannot
can't-
directly connect it, but it can be a contributor.
Definitely, it is a contributor. Yeah, because the diseases that we are getting and that we are having, and going by the contamination that we are consuming, because we are consuming, then that would be a contributor towards it.
All right.
Yes.
And another question I would like you to answer is, can boiling the water help?
We
Robert
have
already
biological and chemical waste.
Yes.
Chemical waste will not,
All right.
boiling will not help.
All right.
Biological waste, that means that you can remove it by boiling.
Okay.
And it also depends with the state of the water that we are talking about.
All right.
Meaning that you will require to take the water through a process, and that will take care of all that. But boiling the water that we are discussing now will not be a solution.
All right.
Yes.
All right. And Robert, you know, tell us.
I think what I wanted to say, back to the statement that I made, Zainab, words are words, promises are promises, explanations are explanations, only performance is a reality. We are dealing with a dam of 66 billion in Makueni called Thwake, whose water is from Nairobi. So one will ask, why invest that much only to collect everything that we are talking about here? So as we talk about all this pollution, let's not talk about stories, let's talk about a reality. Right now, Makueni rivers have dried,
Okay.
boreholes have dried. The only remaining source of water is Thwake. Is the Athi River. Athi River, with everything we have talked about, people are forced to get there. So this is not a discussion, but a serious matter of life and death.
Okay.
And that's why I'm asking, what is the immediate thing that we can take home from this discussion, or even after this discussion, so that as we do Thwake Dam, we are sure we are not collecting more E. coli, more lead or whatever. Two, the people that are currently drinking water from that river, whose responsibility to save them
All right.
from accumulating all these heavy metals, and in the long term, whether they are causing cancer or not, but the truth is these are metals that cause a lot of harm to the person. So I think it's important at this point in time to take immediate corrective measures. One, everybody who's polluting, and sister, you have said you know. I think that's a good point. If we already know who the polluters are, why are they not in court? Why are they not? Why are they walking free? They should be actually behind the bars today. If actually we are serious, that's what I'm asking. Any company that is polluting should be closed today. Any structure that is throwing effluent into the river, those structures should be demolished. So I think, well, let's appreciate good effort to identify, but actually the best action should have been demolishing those structures, taking people to court, because downstream we are dying. One person dying because of 100 factories is too many.
All right.
And therefore we need action, and now.
All right. Veska, your response to some of these issues, of course, and just pointing out at Louisa Kabiru saying, why don't we clamp down on residential buildings in Ndegwa, which mostly drain their raw sewage into the river? I just wanted to point that out. And of course, together with your closing remarks.
Yeah, thank you very much. Now, so let me start from where Joe started. When I started this discussion, I said we require a multi-agency approach.
All right.
Because Nairobi County cannot be operating in isolation. We need NEMA, we need Marma, we need other counties like Kiambu, we need Machakos, for example, because of Athi River. And I can tell you, after the Athi River, the chromium deposits, and I don't know if you noticed that, from the processing of the tanneries in Athi River is one of its kind. And there's a lot of research information that is there. Two, in the last World Environment Day, we invited Nairobi University and other research institutions, and we said, can we share this information so that as we go out to even educate people, let's show them the impact of the activities. Now, you hear the multi-agency approach, everyone will want to be protectionist. NEMA will say, you are encroaching on my mandate. Warma will say, don't do canalization because you will affect the aesthetic and the natural flow of rivers. But we must agree, we are dealing with changing times that requires very drastic measures.
So way forward, very
Way
quickly.
forward.
Yes.
Number one, let the discussions leave the boardrooms, the studios, to where the action is.
All right.
When we are bringing down structures, let politicians not interfere with the operations of the county government and the Minister of Interior to give necessary support for all structures that are sitting along the river to be pulled down.
All right.
Number two, Nairobi Water Company, and I want to give you shocking statistics. 34% of sewer waste in Nairobi is the only sewer we can account for. It means for all the waste that we produce, human waste, for example,
All right.
we can only account for 34%. 66% is either in the soil or in the rivers. So, Zainab, I'm expecting you to be talking to the national government, for example, to allocate more water to Nairobi Water Company to increase the sewerage infrastructure.
All right.
Finally, I want to give notice to all institutions, especially the private developers, who have continued to construct without going as per the plans of the county government, that take notice that we will bring down your structures, and please don't blame Governor Sonko, because we are looking at the women and the children in Kitui, in Makueni, in Malindi, who are being affected by the operations of a few of us in Nairobi.
All right, thank you so much. In just 10 seconds, I'll start with you, Dr. Just 10 seconds, your closing remarks.
Well, I would say that it is doable. We have success stories in this country that we can borrow from, and even abroad. For instance, the plastic papers, we were able to take care of that.
All right.
And now we are proud of it. But I think we and every person must take responsibility.
All right.
We must realize that what we are doing is affecting us, directly or indirectly. And I think having taken that and involving everybody in this, then a solution is with us, because we have solutions.
All right.
And we should be able to apply that.
Collective responsibility.
Yes.
Thank you. Joe?
I think I'm happy to listen to Fesca. When I hear her speak, I feel I have a partner in this madness, fighting this madness. But one thing I need also to advise her is that...
Very quickly, yes.
Yes, there's one thing I want to advise her. There is no developer in this city who will dig a trench without approval of the same Nairobi County. So you give somebody approval to build, right? Then tomorrow, after the building has been finished, you see them there with the green machine. I think we need to get it right before that person is allowed to build.
To get to the bottom of it.
And for your information, when they are building, they are inspecting from every day they are there.
Okay.
And then they wait until this person finishes, and now they are painting, you see them there. Why are we taking people to this kind of...
All right, thank you.